Life as we know keeps evolving. With increasing population and ever-rising need for more and more products and services, there is one service that is at the heart of it all. Transportation and logistics. The growth in this sector has seen a steady rise, and with it, the demand for highly experienced professionals. For almost a century, CILT has been in the forefront of this industry. And now, with a membership of over 34,000 in over 34 countries, this is by far the preferred professional body for professionals engaged in supply chain, logistics and transport. Logistics today is not only limited to shipping or transportation, but also innovation, dynamism, and the ability to provide opportunity for everyone. CILT Sri Lanka focused on vibrancy and professionalism as the capability and expertise to add value in leading the logistics and transportation industry. It is the only chartered professional body in the country and has played a pivotal role in producing a number of prominent figures that has contributed innumerably to Sri Lanka. CILT-SL aims to deliver excellence at every step of your career, from that of a school leaver to a strategic business leader. The extremely progressive nature of logistics is such that its roles will always prove to be a complex and challenging, yet well rewarding. CILT-SL offers a comprehensive approach to supply chain, transport and logistics professionals, teaching and exposing you. From the foundation upwards, using real-life case studies, field visits, and further supported by experts in the field, sharing their experience through mentoring. CILT is not just a qualification, but a step in the right direction of becoming a leader within this industry. We think, act as leaders while setting high standards and adhering to it. We encourage diversity through our Women in Logistics Transport and the Young Professionals Forum while being passionate in achieving our objectives. All with the belief that we are all family and are stronger together. We are the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport.
Along with the company of Master Mariners of Sri Lanka, would like to warmly welcome you all to the PB Karandewala Memorial Lecture 2021. As we are a few minutes away from commencing the event, please rise for the national anthem.
Sri Lanka Mata, Apa Sri Lanka, Namo 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 Mata. Sundara Sri Parini, Surandi Api Sumana Lanka. Sini senta sadhana, jeevanaye mata. Dili danu mena apabhakti puja, namo namo mata. Apa Sri Lanka, namo 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 mata. Apabila Obamaya Apasatya Obari Apashanti Apahad Kulabhanti Apa Aloke Apadi anuprani Oba apa jivanade Apa muktiya obade Nava jivanade mini Nikina apa kubutu peran wata Nyana vida vada vanina ragina yanu mena jaya mudipara Ekramavata diganu kalabadina Yamu yamu vinopama Prema vada samadreta duralala Namo namo mata Apa Sri Lanka Namo 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 mata
Now you may take your seats. To commence today's event, may I now have the honor of inviting Mr. Salia Senanayake, FCILT, former chairman, CILT Sri Lanka, and former international vice president of CILT on stage to deliver a few words about the Honorable Mr. P.B. Karandewala. Sir, over to you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak a few words. I know that it's a tough time to come to for an event like this in the heart of Colombo and with various restrictions. And I thank you all who have come here. And I know there's so many people linked on this through Zoom, and we hope that it will be a very good evening. First of all, on behalf of the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport and the company of Master Mariners, I wish to welcome all of you as well as the ones on the virtually connected for the P.B. Karandewala Memorial Lecture. This annual event by the CILT and one of this which I personally treasure. We also welcome the family member from Karandewala family. She's been always supportive and coming for our events and in memory of her father. And we would like her sometime later to garland the photograph of the great PBK. He was a visionary, policymaker, and administrator who played a pivotal role in modernizing the merchant shipping industry of Sri Lanka. We remember Mr. Karandewala mostly as the former chairman of Ceylon Shipping Corporation, but he had many roles. Of course, he was an economist. He was a principal maker. He was the principal maker behind the Merchant Shipping Act, number 52 of 71. And at the time, he was the secretary of Ministry of Shipping and Tourism. And he was also the chairman of Ceylon Shipping Corporation, I think Colombo Dockyard, Central Freight Bureau, then later on Air Ceylon, Central Transport Board, CTB, etc., etc. He was a man well sought after to convert either companies that were not doing so well or set up new companies and make them really work well. He saw the age of container shipping, I think, when he used to tell us, the young bucks at Ceylon Shipping Corporation, and I think I see Rohan here, both of us. We were told to do the Chartered Institute of Transport at that time as our future exams, because we in our letter of appointment had this requirement to qualify in one of these exams to for our progress. And he personally told me, you follow this, this is the future. for him to think of that in the early to mid 70s, that CIT and CILT, which is now as a Chancellor of Logistics and Transport, he had very much vision. So therefore, he would have seen some sort of combined transportation, containerization taking over far before a lot of the other policymakers thought of it. His pioneering work in shipping was done at the time when the ships were floating warehouses, spending half of his life in ports, either loading or unloading. The world view of the intellectual giants such as P.B. Karandewala was shaped by the imperative of breaking free from the post-colonial global order that dominated the shipping industry in the 60s and 70s. So I think it's very difficult for us to put back yourself into what the situation was then. As a lot of you all are not as old as we are, but there are people who still remember what the situation was at that time. So in developing this Ceylon Shipping Corporation, so we say that Ceylon Shipping Corporation was set up, we were politically decolonized, and economic decolonization had yet to be realized. So this is the situation at that time, because 1971 was the time that Sri Lanka became a republic, and we had this JVP uprising at that time, as well as sort of a lot of things disturbed things, but he had his vision and we continued to do what we had to do. So I'm talking about Mr. Karandewala as CSC, because for us, he was the father of CSC as it is. He was the first chairman, and I am happy to see that Mr. Neil De Silva is here. His father was then managing chairman of Port Cargo Corporation and also one of the founder directors of Ceylon Shipping Corporation and a very close associate of Mr. K. So I think there are a lot of other people like Mr. Mahinda Katugaha here and Mr. Ranjit Wickramasinghe. I see Victor Pires. These are the original people from Ceylon Shipping Corporation at that stage who were people who got the what we call the disciples of Mr. Karandewala, like ourselves. So Rohan and I were the younger generation. These were the older generation at that time by one step, because they were there. They were the pioneers. We were the second and third batches. Anyway, we must understand and recall what are our what the imperatives were. When Ceylon Shipping Corporation was formed, it was as CSC Limited, then it became Ceylon Shipping Corporation. And at that time, the other countries, the national shipping lines were just developing. We got a lot of help from the National Shipping Corporation of Pakistan at that time. Actually, the national Neptune Orient Lines or the National Shipping Line of Singapore was just forming at the same time. But events that took place thereafter, because Mr. K couldn't be there to continue his vision, but from that on, I think the ports, Sri Lanka Ports Authority, whom we are going to listen from the Managing Director of the Sri Lanka Ports Authority, I think though he was not heading the port as such, he built up the shipping so that the port could develop, and thereafter, with the start of containerization of Ceylon Shipping Corporation and bringing in full container vessels on regular services, that gave birth, I think, to Jaya Container Terminal and the progression that it has made over the years within the Port of Colombo. So I think that's the topic today. So that's what I want to allude to. The topic today, which Mr. Premachandra will talk about, the past, present, and the future? Or what is the topic, Prem? Okay, sorry. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow of the ports. And that's what I think you will all come here to listen to. And I'm sure that Mr. Premachandra will give us a very much of a invigorating speech that we will listen to and take home and chew on it, because there is a lot of people talking about these subjects these days, some with knowledge and some with little knowledge, unfortunately. So I take my leave and I leave the floor for Mr. Premachandra, or are you going to do the Ghalandi first? Yeah, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. May I now invite Ms. Kumari Karandewala, daughter of Mr. Karandewala, who will be representing the Karandewala family, Mr. Salia Senanayaka, FCILT, and Mr. Chaminda Hulangamwa, Council Member, Chairman, Maritime Sectional Committee, and Captain Mahendra Ranatunga, President of CMM, to garland the photograph of the late Mr. P.B. Karandewala. Mr. P.B. Karandewala will always be in our minds and forever in our hearts. May we also take this opportunity to extend our greatest gratitude towards our corporate sponsors and event sponsors, Company of Master Mariners, South Asia Gateway Terminal, Colombo International Container Terminal, MSC Lanka Private Limited, McLaurence's Logistics, and Lanka Shipping and Logistics Private Limited. Now, may I have the honor of introducing to you all our speaker for today's event. He is a prominent and an inspirational character with years of experience in the field of logistics and transportation. He is a graduate in business administration and received his master's degree with first-class honors in port management and harbor administration from the University of Antwerp, Belgium. He started his career as a management trainee at SLPA and moved up through the ranks to be the additional managing director, a position he held until he left SLPA. He has also showcased immense talent at the Port of Furjaha as the terminal coordinator and the Westport of Malaysia as the technical advisor and the head of container terminal department. Furthermore, he worked as a regional manager, Port and Terminal Asia of CMA CGM, the third largest shipping line globally, and has worked as CMA CGM Terminal Link and CMA Terminal stationed in Kuala Lumpur, Mumbai, and Busan. He had worked in multiple of ports, assisting CMA CGM in investment in terminals, in designing and developing container terminals, including fully automated facilities, as well as improving port performance for their shipping liners in countries around the globe, including Middle East, Africa, USA, and Europe. He then served as the Chief Executive Officer of Lark's Terminals and was subsequently appointed once again as the Managing Director of SLPA. It's none other than Mr. H.D.S. Premachandra. Sir, we would like to warmly welcome you on stage to deliver today's session on port development yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Over to you, sir.
Good evening to all of you, those who are present here, as well as those who are connected through the web to listen to my dull and dab so-called lecture within the next few minutes. Generally, a lecture is delivered by a learned person to students. I do not know how I can term this a lecture, because when I scan the audience, most of the personalities I see happen to be my teachers. So when a student has to deliver a lecture to teachers, it's a bit embarrassing, really. But nevertheless, one of them told me not to worry, that he might switch off his ears. And thanks to the cover, I may not see his grin. For that matter, I may not see most of the grin, so I can feel very relaxed. Actually, I must thank the organizers for allowing this moment to pay tribute to this great leader whom I had never met. When I joined the industry in 1978, he was no more in Sri Lanka, I believe. They say that no man is indispensable, but some characters are not replaceable. We have seen so many such individuals, leaders, who steered this nation towards progress during our lifetime and before. And we have never seen anyone else stepping into those shoes to do anything better, or even 50% of what was delivered by those characters such as Mr. Karandawala, Mr. G.W. Devasurendra, Mr. A.N.S. Kulasinghe, Mr. Lalit Athulat Mudali, Mr. Vimal Amarasekara, the founder of the Sri Lanka Ports Authority, and many. So my tribute to these great characters and the visionary leader who pioneered the maritime industry of which we are members today, and also the school, the university that bred the top level professionals steering the industry today. So with those words, let me jump into my topic. Give me a moment. Port development yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So this is a very vast scope. It's not possible for an average person like me to deliver a lecture covering the entire sphere of what is covered by the subject. So I thought of putting in some disclaimers. I would refrain from covering the entire thing, just refer to Colombo, so that I will save some of your valuable time. And also, at the bottom is my disclaimer. I'm not here as the Managing Director of the Ports Authority. I'm here as Prem, who had shared something like 42 years in this industry with you, who has shared the good, bad, and the ugly that we all enjoyed and suffered during the 4 decades, to share some of it that you already know, and to share some of my personal knowledge that you may or may not know. So views expressed here are purely my personal views. They have nothing to do with the views of the Ports Authority or the government of Sri Lanka or any of the personnel who head various institutions. So let me move on without taking much of your time. I have organized this presentation into 3 sections. Number 1 is port facility development. Valayana pattara massa gehuwada. We know the meaning, I think. Number 2, port organizational evolution, coping with growth potential. Number 3, port investment, selling national assets or grabbing opportunities. Yesterday, on the extreme left on the top, you see a queen being unloaded. Must have been in 1800. Then you see the bullock carts being used for transportation. This is port. I think it's fort area or Peta area inside the port. The third picture shows a steam operated crane, men loading tea boxes into lighters. You see at the left corner, the harbor without any alongside facilities. BQ Bandaranaike is being built. Many ships in the stream. This was the situation when I joined in the 1970s as well. There was only the Bandaranaike, but there was no JC, no container terminals. There were plenty of ships in the stream. The line of barges was so many, we could walk something like half a kilometer into the center of the harbor, jumping from barge to barge. Interesting thing happened in 1972. What you see is the first container being discharged from President Tyler. And that's how we started. Until 2005, this is all we had. The JCT developed in 1985. SAGT injected in 1995 to 1999. It took a long time for it to come up. I'm sure Ms. Geeta Karandewala must be listening to me now, and she was one of those personalities involved in this exercise, and I don't know whether I should share or not. One sentence made it happen. One sentence in a paper advertisement, I can say this today, made this happen. We were advertising for a South Harbour. The first time in the history of port development, anybody talked about creating a South Harbour. We talked about a South Harbour, and then we, in that, included a sentence to welcome any alternative development proposals. And that alternative development proposal was the one we called SAGT, that compelled the harbour to move from yesterday to, or rather, I'm talking about yesterday now. So in a matter of 2 to 3 years, moved a decade ahead from a primitive, mediocre level port to a port that can accommodate any ship that requires a depth of 15 meters. And that credit should go to those pioneers who spearheaded it. And that's all. From here, there was nothing happened for a long, long time until in 2005, the government changed, and then there was a process that started a long time ago, but it had not taken any shape until this breakwater was created, and it enclosed 1,200-300 acres of sea area into the land and made it possible for Colombo to move to the next stage. And by creation of South Terminal, we all know the statistics. I will not bore you with it. It cost something like $500 million to create the South Terminal, but it cost something like $500 million to the builder to build the breakwater, although it cost SLP only $400 million. There is also a party to be remembered, an international contractor who undertook to build this at the cost that the company agreed at the stage of tender and spent well over $100 million to complete it. So we all must pay tribute to that unknown party that whose name was never mentioned in any forum, Hyundai Engineering and Construction Company. If not for all those, we wouldn't be seeing this new harbor today and the political decision that made it happen. Then came CICT, another $500 investment that moved Colombo very quickly from a simple hub port that was catering to minor services passing by, to a port that can cater to the largest ships that were in service between East and the West. So that's again history. I'll take you forward. There was another development that happened at the first time in Sri Lanka, creating capacity ahead of demand. This is very vital because we are going to talk about again. SLP, by creating ECT, starting off ECT simultaneously or more or less simultaneously with CICT, I think took a great step ahead. I always pay tribute to those who spearheaded this, although we never reaped the harvest of it thanks to our inefficiency over the years. This was a great step forward. CICT started operation in 2013. In 5 years, the capacity was fully utilized, bringing us to the level we are today. There is another significant happening that happened yesterday. The government at that time undertook 2 giant development projects at the same time. I have no idea of any other tiny country or even a large country that ventured into this kind of bold projects simultaneously. In the deep south, port of Hambantota was created. If I remember correct, many had no faith in this port. Many never believed that there was a reason to have another large port in Hambantota. So you have, for the first time in the history, 2 planned port developments. South Port of Colombo, a PPP, SAGT was actually Valayana Pattara Massa Gahilla, right? Vala came, we put the Massa there and allowed the creeper to grow that way. It grew, but CICT wasn't that. Government went in for a PPP and CICT became the final result. This port is the next step any government has taken with a proper plan. Since the Europeans did the first breakwater in 1800. Well-planned port. If you look at the master plan, you will understand how well the port has been planned. A massive land area to serve as the immediate service area of the port. 3 phases of development into the future. A large area of land around the port that can serve as the immediate hinterland, that can attract businesses, that would create domestic cargo, freight required for the port. This is why these 2 developments are historical. They are planned developments that created history. I'll come back to Colombo, back to CICT. This was built in 2 years. That again is a, very good achievement in port building. Generally, they say a terminal of this size takes something like 3 to 3.5 years. This was built very quickly. ECT, we have a built-up area of 440 meters, which can accommodate cranes. 20 hectares of land already done for handling, at a rough cost of about today's level, 120 million US dollars. It's over there now. Once fully developed, this terminal can go up to 1,320 meters of quay, which can accommodate 3 of the largest 400-meter ships, depth from 18 to 20 meters, and a land area of 75 hectares, by far the largest terminal in Colombo. 2015 to 2019 was also very historic. Unfortunately, I was also here to witness this sad period in history of port development. For ECT, there was a tender floated in 2013-14 for equipment, and this tender was cancelled. Multiple action taken to free float the tender failed due to various reasons. But nevertheless, a very interesting project took place again, the second public-private partnership venture. I am sure all the Maritime Committee would have been very happy that there was a transparent process to select an investor for the East Container Terminal. 7 parties were shortlisted, and among them were the top 3 port operators, top 3 shipping lines. What more can you ask for? If you want to sell this port, if you want to walk to any bank and ask the bank to finance a terminal or any other facility in this port, what more can you show? And that's how attractive this port was. But unfortunately, that didn't go through. That was abandoned in favor of a government-to-government deal, which we see the results today, many years later. But unfortunately, this period, nothing happened in terms of enhancing port capacity. Port development stalled. Congestion came into being. You saw the results of congestion during the COVID period. Ports are generally built for peak demand, not for average demand. This port has passed peak demand situation well before COVID hit us. When COVID hit, there was no space for terminal operators to face the peak. We all suffered. Today, we have also a project to enhance the capacity of JCT. JCT5, there is a lot of talk about JCT5 being a waste of funds, that we do not need JCT5. We should invest that funds as well in ECT. This was approved for equipment as well as the construction of the berth extension of 120 meters. Unfortunately, in 2019, the civil construction was stopped. Cranes on order arrived, but the terminal extension was not there. So the cranes ended up in ECT. You know the fiasco that took place. You know the suffering that the industry had to undergo and the government had to undergo thanks to this wrong decision. A spate of wrong decisions, indecisions, led to the miserable situation that we together face today. JCT5 is a waste of funds. Will die in few years. Experts make predictions. Similar predictions were made in 2015. They wanted to close JCT 1 and 2 and allow a crane builder to assemble cranes. What would be the situation if this was allowed at that time? Prediction was that JCT 1 and 2 had no life beyond the next 5 years. Imagine today if we didn't have JCT 1 and 2. The port would have perished. A port not only depends on deep berths, it depends also on shallow berths. Whatever happens in this port, East Terminal, West Terminal number 2, number 3, number 4, JCT and SHGT would be the lifeline of this hub. Without these two terminals, the port will not run. This was aptly proven during the COVID period. When JCT had trouble, CICT stopped. Very simple. The last week there was one day, we had 46% of the entire port's total volume lying in JCT because there was a feeder connection issue in Bangladesh. That's how important JCT is. So can you let JCT die? Feeders need berths as well. So this type of predictions, people who do not know the subject should not talk about it. I will tell you an anecdote to amuse you. Ms. Karandewala may remember, Ms. Geeta Karandewala may remember. In 1995, we were looking for an expert to advise the Ports Authority. She talked to World Bank, and World Bank recommended one Mr. Kek Chung, an expert from Port of Singapore Authority. I was the host, so I took him to the terminal and I had a long chat with him. And then he confessed, he said, Prem, I never expected Colombo to be this way. I had worked in Port of Singapore for a long time in 1970s. We were using cards. And now you have a beautiful computer system. I don't know how to advise you. So I went and told Ms. Karandewala, look, I'm in trouble now. We have got an expert who is an expert. He has been there, spent. So what do we do? Then she said, then you have to do a Kek, instead of Kek Chun, you have to do a Kek Prem. So I wrote the report and he signed it. So this is an anecdote I want to relate to you so that you would be amused, but none of you are amused. If you are amused, I cannot see because you are masked. Even today, less than 15% of the total ship population requires anything more than 14.25 meter draft. This will continue. You know what Bangladesh is about. You know many ports in the subcontinents. Why for anything more than 14 meter depth? Plenty of ports do not have that. So let's forget about it. Every time we injected capacity to this port, there was always a leap. Look at the situation in SAGT. This happened. Then came UCT and JCT re-equipment. A very interesting thing happened during this period as well. I should pay tribute to the port managers, port management that took this decision to re-equip JCT. If not for those new equipment, JCT would be dead today. There was an increase. This period, the port survived thanks to re-equipment of JCT and UCT. Then comes CICT. You see the leap within a matter of 2 to 3 years, the volume jumps. It's very clear. This port needs capacity and we never provided it in time, and this is what happened. Look at here. 2019 to 2020, look at the demand, look at where we are. This is where the capacity is, this is where the demand is. And you can see if you build WCT and ECT, you have in purple color ECT and WCT in blue color. It may look like overcapacity when you look at this, but you know that if this capacity is injected here, the demand would never be this. More lines would inject larger ships into the services and there will be a leap of volumes. Never happened. So, capacity shortage result in loss of market. So we need to very quickly inject capacity. That is why we pushed the ministry, including the minister, the port authorities, entire management of the ports authority, pushed for simultaneous development of ECT and WCT. We are lucky, so whichever way it happened, it doesn't matter. වැල යන පැත්තට මැස්ස ගහන්න වුණොත් වැල යන පැත්තට මැස්ස ගහලා හරි වැල ගෙනියන්න ඕන. This, if I translate to English, it will have no weight, right? So what we have done is that now I'm truly happy to be here. If this did not happen, I wouldn't accept this invitation. If I had no idea that this wouldn't happen, I wouldn't. I would be ashamed to stand here and talk to you about tomorrow, because there'll be no tomorrow. So it's now time to push them forward. In tandem, government decides ECT by SLPA. I'm sure most of you are not very happy, but wait and see. Give us a chance. SLP has created ports, hasn't it? Within those ports, PPP ventures thrived, didn't they? So SLP has a role to play. If it plays, the rest can happen. This time, government had decided that SLPA should continue as the operator as well. Okay. Let's again, we have undertaken that. There is this story about Colombo creating overcapacity. I'm sorry, I'm taking more time than you have given me. Overcapacity. Are we creating overcapacity? You saw what happened when we had no capacity. What is the demand? Demand is something that you should create. In shipping, there's nothing called the demand that's waiting for you to supply. You got to throw supply out, prove to the lines that you can cope with their growth in tandem. You have to prove it to them. Then when they come, you are ready to take them. And that's how you develop ports. In the 80s, I remember when I was in the University of Antwerp, they told me the days that ships waited for berths are over. Students, remember, we have created berths waiting for ships. That was first time I heard that, and I remembered that. We need this. We need a port which is only 50% full. If you want to canvas for more cargo, we want to canvas for relay, we want a 40% full port with 60% capacity waiting. Without that, we would be totally dependent on India. And as you know very well, Indian ports invite for direct services. It will continue. Only 4% of volume from West Coast tranships to any port. East Coast has deep water ports. They will attract direct services. Where would we get the cargo? Unless we create enough capacity to attract relay. So capacity ahead of demand is the need today. I will go very quickly. Time is passing by. WCT and ECT together. Then we have to quickly go for breakwater extension. We do not have time. Now that we have triggered WCT, when WCT is being built, we need to start creating this breakwater. We need to create this breakwater. If we do not do this, again, we'll be behind demand. We will have no supply ahead of demand. Again, we'll be crying. So now it is the time to push all of us together. Start the breakwater. Find money for the breakwater. We got to. We have a decision. We have plunged in. We have no choice. We have to either swim or die. So if you choose to swim, you have to gear yourself. 2,600 meters of breakwater. This will not only house, look at that blue thing over there. This we need, LNG. We do not have facilities for liquid cargo in this port. We need this. So for the future of this port, this has to be done quickly, and this has to start simultaneously. At least when WCT is halfway, breakwater construction has to start. Further, do you note the next step? The North Breakwater. Now we have AECOM consultants in this area doing the feasibility study for the North Breakwater, extending from Kalny Mouth towards the sea. Without this arm, this would not be possible. Without WCT2 extension, it would not be possible for North Port to open up the area. You don't see the island breakwater here. You don't see the two appendages end of this terminal anymore. Those have to go. And the harbor will be opened. You see the terminal that can happen only with the breakwater here, 3 kilometers of breakwater. You can go for a massive terminal combining SHGT and ECT, a massive development inside the harbor, taking the port to 25 million TEUs. This may look like a dream, but I am not the only one dreaming, as that famous singer says. Many of us dream. And that's what the future would look like if we go ahead. So that ends the facility story. ECT. You see the first crane over here is manually operated. Men have to turn the wheel for the crane to operate. Second crane is operated by steam power. You have the first container being unloaded. Then you have cranes, gantry cranes operated. In this particular case, this is a lady operating a gantry crane. And that's the future. That's what ECT is going to look like. ECT, the first of its kind in Colombo. An automated yard. You see, it's a different kind of a configuration to what you see today in Colombo. Not parallel yards anymore, but perpendicular yards. Not RTGs anymore, but RMGs, rail-mounted gantries, on perpendicular stacks. No longer priority for ships only. Equal treatment for land as well as the ship. One crane serving the land side, the other one serving the seaside. Very popular model today. You see the seaside. This I have taken from a terminal in Korea. That's the seaside. Transactions on the seaside happens only here. Trucks, containers are unloaded by the crane onto the ground. Shuttle carriers take them and dump under the yard cranes. Yard cranes take them to the stacks. The land side, gatehouse is here. Trucks come into the yard, get parked here. Automated cranes come and deliver the boxes. They go out. They don't go inside the yard, intermingle with the terminal traffic. They don't create accidents. There are no queues. This is required in Colombo today because our port depends on interterminal transfers. We have realized that the land side transactions are equally or more important than the ship side transactions if the ships are to be dispatched. Connections are to be made. If the local client has to take an equal service, we have to provide this. We have not looked at it before. So that's how the crane operator would look like. In this particular case, they are Korean ladies. They will be replaced by honey-colored girls, right? And that's the terminal we have taken as a benchmark. Busan New Container Terminal. He won the Best Terminal Award in 2016, launched in 2012. A Sri Lankan was the team leader that planned and operationalized this terminal in Busan New Port. So ECT would be similar. That's ECT. That's how it will look like. 2/3 of the yard area is sufficient to handle 3 million TEUs thanks to this new method of handling. High density stacks, high speed cranes, dedicated for both sides, high speed transactions. Then we have the RTG area already in place with 12 RTGs. We are planning to convert this into a new business, a package deal for any line that calls at this terminal, this port. We will undertake all empty container value-added services here and DIT services here. So this terminal would be one of a kind. A truly green terminal with a difference. Zero to low emission operating equipment, because we are going to electrify the quayside and the yard cranes. We are looking at straddle carriers either using less fuel or using batteries. They are in existence today. Then cold ironing, you know what cold ironing is. Ships will not be allowed to have the engines running. We will provide power, shore power. Already even the existing terminal has the capacity to, as the facilities to provide shore power. Minimum lighting levels, because this particular operational model doesn't require lights, only minimum lights for the operators, the manual areas for the operators to drive and so on. You don't need high lux level. So the city dwellers, the new habitats coming up in the port city area would not like our terminals to have glaring lights in the night. We have to be mindful of this. Already, you know, today there was an article about the oxygen level in port city area. Pretty bad. We should not add to it. So our equipment would blend with the environment, would blend it with the sky. These are the things that are already implemented elsewhere in the world. We are not inventing. Green buildings. You know what green buildings are? Lowest noise, because automated yards do not make noise. Lowest possible noise. Green belts, we have plenty of corners. We are going to create green areas inside the terminal. Trees, clean water. We will not send a drop of water into the ocean with dirt. This will be planned that way. And best productivity for both ships and trucks. This is proven. You can check on internet. The terminals of this type are known to be the most efficient. So much so, Singapore in 2 hours is building this same. Already in Abu Dhabi, they have built the terminal in this manner. China is turning into this already. And I know Vizhinjam is turning into this already. We have seen the crane orders from Vizhinjam, India. We are not the first. So a package deal, you notice that 50% of the employees of this terminal would be women. Sorry? Yeah. Manning. Womaning? Is there a word called womaning? No, right? Unfortunately, somebody must invent a word now to match the changing, right? Willard. Let's ask Willard on the 19th to find some new term for this, right? So we will, as much as possible, adhere to SDG goals. Automation is the future. We will place Colombo on the path to this goal. This is semi-automated, but this design incorporates everything required to go full auto whenever we are ready for that. But right now, we have an unemployment situation. Therefore, we're not proposing to go full auto. Instead, we are going only on semi-auto mode. So I'm jumping into port organizational evolution, coping with growth potential. I say coping with growth potential because it is very important for everything to evolve with the growth. Capacities evolve to cope with volumes, right? Organizational structures should also evolve to cope with the growth. If you do not do this, you will never reap the harvest. Your capacity is there physically, but you will not get the business running efficiently. Therefore, it is necessary that for that to happen. So before 1959, you see the Port Commission, you had the landlord model in place, right? Operations were done by private sector, stevedores very inefficiently. Then comes Port Commission, Port Cargo Corporation and the Tally Services Corporation. Port Commission was the landlord and the regulator. You see? Is it the future or the present? I'm a bit unsure. It's a circle anyway, right? It's a circle. SLPA becomes the landlord, regulator, and the operator. And 99, it happens. For the first time, you have a PPP project with SAGT, and then comes CICT, and then WCT will come. SLPA, port operator, the shareholder, the landlord, the regulator, and the competitor. It's a very complex role. We may say that we have been playing it, but if you ask Romesh, he might have a different view. If you ask Tissa, he might have a different view about how we harmoniously manage this business up to now. Maybe thanks to individuals, but should it be the future? Now, government has decided SLPA should continue as the operator. So we have a given situation. Again, you have valor. You have to put a master because this has to grow, right? Role of the Ports Authority. We have to evolve with the time. Landlord model, tool port model, service port model, or hybrid model. We don't belong to any of those models. Truly Sri Lankan, aren't we? We are well blended, right? We are a blended nation. Many of you may not agree, but I'm very proud to say I'm a blended product in many ways. Port of Singapore. If you want to go for a government-owned port operator, there are a lot of examples to take. You have Temasek Holding, you have Maritime Port of Singapore, Maritime Authority of Singapore, the landlord, the regulator. Then you have PSA Corporation running terminals. Of course, joint ventures with 6 shipping lines. Then you have PSA International doing international business all over the world. One of the topmost terminal operators today in the world. Then you have Port of Hamburg. City government owns it. HHLA is fully owned by city government, public-owned company, running container terminal Altenwerder, container terminal Burchard Kai, Eurokai, and many other terminals. Public-owned. So you can't say that public-owned model is a failure. It is not a failure. A failure happens when you do not know, you do not apply the right kind of framework and the policies into this game. So I do not want to elaborate this. There are plenty of, professionals here. This is a subject that we should ponder, a subject that we should discuss widely, openly. And first, my personal view is the time has come for the organization to evolve, end the conflicts, have very clear organizational structures. We have a huge task to build a very large port. Somebody should take over that task. That cannot be done if your hands are tied in day-to-day nitty-gritty affairs of running operations. So it's up to you. I'm throwing this to you. Sorry? Hala is a public, fully owned by city government. Yeah, City Council of Hamburg, and other companies are also fully owned. So there are other you can talk about Port of Dubai, Port of Abu Dhabi, and so on and so forth. But they are different, they are not democracy. So I didn't want to take them as examples. So port investment, selling national assets or grabbing opportunities. This is a very hot topic. I think we should talk about it. I'm a bit sad actually. We needed your support. We were on the dock, being pelted, being ripped open, being attacked from all sides for supporting public-private partnership into ports. Not supporting A, B or C, not supporting Adani Ports or anybody else. It doesn't matter who it is, right? We needed support. Please, don't leave us alone, because we as individuals may be in the wrong place fighting for the right cause. So we need your support. It's a global business. You know how shipping lines started blending with each other? Ports cannot survive alone. Hub business needs supply ahead of demand. This means massive investments, continuous investments. Small economies like ours can't afford this. Maybe we have come to the tether's end. Time to think about it. Port operators should expand ports, build breakwaters, create harbors. This requires massive funds. I was talking about extending West Terminal to breakwater, 200 to 250 million US dollars. Who will pump it? SLP has to pump it. No private operator can be asked to pump in a $250 million for a breakwater and create a terminal for another $800 million and make that investment when you have better other lucrative investment that may pays better dividends. Our tiny economy cannot manage such funding. We should choose whether to lose, virginity or remain celibate forever. It's a time. Last to lose was PSA. After losing 10 million TEUs to Malaysia. We all know the story. I happened to be living in Southeast Asia at that time. Rich nations have chosen partnerships in spite of being able to finance on their own. China, Netherlands, South Korea, Australia, India. Who are we? Are we the richest on earth? Have we got the funds to feed the demand, the capacity ahead of demand? I don't think so. Port investment, selling national assets or grabbing opportunities. China happens to be the greatest culprit because China sells its national assets left, right, and center. Please understand the pun. That's AP Moller terminals. Look at what they have done in China. My God. They are a European company. China has sold their sovereignty to Europe. That's PSA Corporation. 13 ports in China. I'm concentrating in China because China happened to be a communist economy. We are not more communist than China. So if China can keep only 30% and give 70% out to European companies, right? If India wishes to invest in China, I'm sure China would welcome. What is wrong with us? These are only two global operators. Look at India. Now that we know Adani are investing in Sri Lanka, look at India. You have Mundra, you have 4 terminals, you have Adani running one, CMA CGM and Adani joint venture terminal, MSC and Adani joint venture terminal, and DP World 100% owned terminal in Mundra. Haven't they got money to invest? Are they selling their national assets? You have Pipavav, APM Moller, Maersk, and you have JNPT, DP World, APMT, PSA. You have Cochin, DP World, Vizhinjam being built, their own company Adani, and then Tuticorin, PSA. Look at the East Coast, NO, Chennai, DP World and PSA. NO, Katupalli, Vizag, Adani. So that's how India and China, the largest economies that provide business to the world, and India that provides 80% or 66% of our transshipment business, sells their national assets to rest of the world. PSA buys 20% of Hutchison ports. They were competitors. Why should Hutchison give 20% to PSA? They are competitor. Pooling resources. MSC and Maersk, top two rivals, competitors, even today. But they are together. If you look at the way the ships are loaded, I'm sure the terminal boys know, everybody goes with the other. It's a jungle really out there. All kind of animals are there on board. All colors are there. Global hubs, WU shipping lines and port operators. Look at Rotterdam, Busan, PTP, Mundra, and finally PSA. PSA has been running alone for a long, long time until they lost Maersk to PTP. CMA CGM was almost lost to Portland, right? And then they straight away went with 6 shipping lines because they realized you want to keep the business with yourself, partner with the clients, partner with the operators, make a network. It is the network that gives benefits. Recently, I read the article of our colleague, the head of SLAFA. Very interesting. Network is the requirement of the day. Entry of the Chinese global port operator to Colombo. Was it bad? Is China our enemy? Because they operate a port down south in Hambantota, when the tire industry is created, won't that bring economic benefits to this country? That cement plant they are building, won't that cement plant fill the requirement of this country? Won't part of the revenue coming from that port be enjoyed by this country? Why should anybody invest in another country and give the entire result to that particular country and go, who has the money to do that kind of investment? Investment should have returns. When will we ever understand this logic? Now that you have an Indian mega port operator, what more do we want, right? But with impact. You have the greatest economic partners in the world who will be running terminals here. What better partnership can you ask for? You can ask for shipping lines to partner. You won't. You have shipping lines in SAGT. We welcome, right? Creating networks, partnership with competitors, open up the frontiers. You should not fear the competition. There is this fear of ports for the Singapore Authority. Why should we fear Singapore? Create a network. Join hands with them. Use their strength. Use their network in the world. That is what we should do. Right? Khattadia, you know what he does? Yaka benda ganna. Yakagen wada ganna. They are not devils. They may be competitors, but you have synergies, right? You should not fear competitors and alienate them, demonize them, call them names, and create situations. And at last but not the least, I will not bore you any further. Plea to local entrepreneurs. You are to be blamed for lack of appetite for port investment. Only one company, only John Keys, has come forward to invest. This investment pays back. It's very clear. If we are so keen, if we want our assets to be owned by us, if these are national assets, if we talk so much of not selling to others, invest here. This is your country, and this port belongs to you. It is not SLP's property. That's the only way. Support SLP. If you want this to be majority owned by Sri Lanka, private sector can invest. Please. That's my message. And with that, I end my long presentation. It took more than an hour. And thank you for giving me this opportunity. It was a bit of an outburst of emotions, I am sure. But for an old man who has spent more than 4 decades in this industry, and an old man who would like to exit seeing this industry and the port moving to the next generation, an old man who would like to close his eyes, seeing a hub port that would grow into the next century. I'm emotional. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for that very insightful session. As the end of the event dawns, may I now invite Mr. Chandima Hulangamwa, CMILT, on stage to hand out the token of appreciation to Mr. Premchandra. Ladies and gentlemen, to conclude the 2021 PB Karandavala Memorial Lecture, may I have the honor of inviting Captain Upul Piris, CMILT, Secretary of Company of Master Mariners, on stage to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Pratusha. Good evening, everyone. Guest speaker, Mr. Ananda Premchandra, Mrs. Kumari Karandavala, Mr. Veeraman, Chairman of Ceylon Shipping Corporation, Major General Ravi Priya, Director General Customs, distinguished invitees, Chairman, President, and members of CILT and CMM, ladies and gentlemen. Once a great man whispered, feeling thankfulness and not expressing it is like wrapping a present and not delivering it. It gives me an immense pleasure to deliver the vote of thanks at the conclusion of 2021 PB Karandavala Memorial Lecture, which is jointly organized by the CILT and the Company of Master Mariners. This evening, we witnessed an enlightening presentation on port development. It is most interesting to understand the evolution of Sri Lankan ports, the current operational and logistic status, and the future development. Mr. Premchandra, thank you very much, sir, for accepting our invitation and making yourself available to deliver such an informative and inspirational presentation. Also, I wish to sincerely thank Major General Ravi Priya, Director General of Sri Lanka Customs, Mr. Veeraman, Chairman, Ceylon Shipping Corporation, Mrs. Kumari Karandavala, and all other distinguished invitees for your gracious presence today amidst busy schedule. On behalf of CILT and CMM, I wish to extend special thanks to the event sponsors, McLaren's Logistics Private Limited, Lanka Shipping and Logistics Private Limited, MSC Lanka Private Limited, South Asia Gateway Terminal, and Colombo International Container Terminal for sponsoring the event. Also, I wish to express our gratitude to Ceylon Chamber of Commerce for extending us every facility to make this event a successful event. Let me express my gratitude to the Chairman, President, and the Council members of CILT and CMM for their strong encouragement and support to make this seminar come true. We remain grateful to the CMM members and CILT members for supporting us with their presence. Also, I would like to thank our energetic compere of the event, Ms. Pratusha. Further, we are grateful to Mr. Promoder for Zoom coordination and Russell's, the caterers of the event, for this evening. Finally, words may not suffice to convey my gratitude to Mr. Saliya Senayaka, Captain Lasitha Kumaratunga, and the members of the event organizing committee, without whom this event would not have been a reality. Thank you all the members in the organizing committee for all the troubles taken to make this event a successful one. I wish you all a pleasant evening. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being present here today. To collect your refreshments, please head to the registration table. Thank you. Stay safe and good night.